Meet Gary. The sink fills with warm, soapy water as Gary rinses another plate, his movements automatic. His wife's voice calls from the next room, and then again, sharper this time. Gary, can you help me with the high chair? Gary blinks, turns toward his wife, suddenly brought back to the present. Sorry, he mutters. I didn't hear you. She gives him a look that says, You've been somewhere else all night. And she's right. The grandkids just left, their youngest toddling out with sticky hands and a grin. It was supposed to be a joyful evening, but Gary's mind never left work. 10 years of stability at his company just flipped upside down. A new CEO, new strategies, words like agile, restructure, and realignment float through meetings like ghosts. And Gary, as CFO, is supposed to be a steady hand, but lately, he's been anything but. He hears the whispers from his team. Frustration, confusion, resistance. And sometimes, when they come to him to complain, he joins in out of exhaustion. He knows that's not good leadership, but he doesn't know what is anymore. Everything he's built feels like it's shifting beneath him. He dries his hands and walks over to the living room, sees blocks and other toys scattered on the ground. And as he looks at the clutter, his mind is still somewhere else, trying to grasp how to lead people through change when he himself is lost in it. He doesn't want to be the guy that creates problems, but he's tired. And doubt creeps in, and he's questioning whether he's even cut out for this next chapter. Today, I'm speaking with Rachel Burr, author of Butterfly Goo, The Down and Dirty Truth of Transformation. Rachel is a leadership coach and a transformation expert with over 20 years of experience guiding leaders through change. Rachel helps leaders navigate disruption with emotional intelligence, clarity, and courage, helping them to embrace uncertainty, shift their mindset, and lead with purpose even when the path ahead isn't very clear. And I want to hear how Rachel would help someone like Gary to shift from reaction to intention. How does a seasoned executive get his footing again and lead not just with strategy, but with strength, self-awareness, and with hope? My name is Jay Abbasi, and welcome to Unstuck. Real people, real stories, real solutions. While the details are changed to protect anonymity, what you just heard is based on a true story of challenges that come up in the real world. And we discuss how to navigate these environments with practical tips to help you get unstuck and build a more fulfilling, impactful, and balanced life and career. So Rachel, we're going to get into Gary's story here in a bit, but I want to learn more about you because I know that when I meet with coaches who help people who are stuck, who are really struggling, it's often because they themselves had that happen to them, right? And so I wanted to learn, like, what's your story of that, where you felt stuck, or maybe you were unfulfilled, or you were unhappy with where you were in your career, or maybe even outside of that.
Absolutely. I love that observation as well. In fact, and not to dive into promoting my book right away, but one of the things that really prompted me to write my book, it is called Butterfly Goo, The Down and Dirty Truth of Transformation, is that I did go through my own process. And I also realized that you can write something like that in your own voice. That, yes, is there anything that probably anyone hasn't said before? Probably not. But it's your voice, it's your story, and people may resonate with it where maybe they haven't before. So you get to, reach out to those people. And for me, it was this process. I was going to be a clinical psychologist. I was going to work possibly in research. I was going to do all these things. And I woke up about halfway through a PhD, obviously with signs along the way that I've been ignoring, and realized I was miserable.
Mm.
And I at first left my misery in place. I call it, the comfortable discomfort, because everything out there seems big and scary. And even though I'm miserable, I'm safe. Mm, safe, air quotes for folks who aren't watching this. Um, and so it was a process of really coming to terms and having to have enough of a push. I say in the book that change happens when fear of the unknown is dwarfed by a looming dread of the same. um, and you'll notice part of what it goes into everything I do is humor. I think humor is so important as a coping strategy and just how we engage in life. So, yeah, so the book was really about my journey figuring out, well, I've never thought about what else I want to do. I've never considered a path. I don't even know how to get on a different path.
Mm.
And finding my way, going throughout each of the chapters, I put little takeaways at the end. And I'm very clear through all of this. My path is not going to be your path. It's more about sharing the experience, making change accessible, understandable. We have this idea that it's almost magic when the butterfly comes out of the cocoon. But the takeaways are things I've learned. And if they work for you, great. If they don't, then they don't. Take away your own ideas. And then at the back, there are playground exercises so people can start to mess around with their own transformation. But again, no pressure. And that's what I found, is that there's just a lot of searching that goes on. And early on, I didn't find the mentors. I didn't find people to help. And eventually I did. And that made such a difference in terms of where I started to direct my career. I realized how much more fulfilling it was when I stopped focusing just on my path and helped other people with theirs.
Mm. You brought up something that I was just putting together this piece of content earlier today about the fear of the unknown.
Mm-hmm.
And you brought that up.
Mm-hmm.
Now, a mentor of mine who also I was texting today, which is fascinating that all this is coming together on the same day. It's true. I was texting the person who told me this. He said, Jay, it's not about fear of the unknown. What really grips us is fear of losing the known.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
What are your thoughts on that?
I love that. In fact, the book is kind of based on the hero's journey, Joseph Campbell, and really that break from the known world to the unknown world. And that whole, we think about maybe out of the frying pan into the fire kind of thing, but that is what keeps us, the illusion of safety in what we know and the big scary that's out there. And Campbell talks about this idea of having to go through a rebirth. First of all, we hear the call, right? We ignore the call, standard in all great hero and heroine journeys.
Right.
And then once we decide to move into the unknown, then there is a rebirth of sorts. And that's just the beginning of the journey. But that is this breaking through into, just to even start the transformation. That's the threshold to get moving on our path.
Yeah. I love that you termed it the illusion of safety.
Mm-hmm.
It's an illusion.
It's an illusion.
It's a complete illusion. Like, whenever somebody tells me, oh, I'm afraid of the unknown, I go, okay, well, tell me about what's known. What's known, right? Oh, well, my job is known. It's safe. Okay, right. What if your company decided to eliminate your role tomorrow?
Mm-hmm.
Do you know that that's not going to happen? And of course not. No, you don't know that, right? So it's quite an illusion, and I think that the hero's journey is such a powerful visual for anyone who's ever seen a diagram that was put together. Joseph Campbell's work is phenomenal, and it really does outline the way in which we have to break free from this illusory place of safety and comfort. And you brought up how you use quite a bit of humor. And I was reading, I haven't read the book yet, but I was reading a bit about it and the reviews that are phenomenal about it. And it was oftentimes said that, you're using a lot of humor. And I wanted to ask you if you could share one of the stories from the book, one of the things that you're like, when I think about one of my favorite parts of the book, what comes to mind?
Does it have to be a humorous part? They're also mixed in.
No, it doesn't have to be. I just thought of humor as one potential way to evoke something, but it could be anything that's like the part that you're like, this one is close to my heart.
Yes, I would say they're all probably close to my heart, but I do love the beginning. And you'll see what I do is I use certain pieces and I use them as threads that go through the book. Because I truly believe that when we start to see pieces and threads through our life or through just in general, there's something to pay attention to. There's either a truth or there's something we need to understand. And for me, I describe change in the universe as the universe wielding a cast iron skillet of change. That at first, when we need to change, it's maybe a whisper. And then maybe it's more of a push and we're still ignoring it. And then maybe we get to a point where it's really questioning us. Is this what you want? Is this who you want to be? And it's like, okay, well, at this point, what choice do I have? I've already, committed to so much of this. And I talk about in the book that last straw, at least for the original piece of not the awakening, because that goes on a little bit further, but just feeling bashed in the head by this cast iron skillet, by the universe. And it's just this awakening of, oh my God, what am I doing?
Yeah.
And I say in the book that I would love to tell you that in that moment that there was an awakening, it heralded a new era, all of that, but it wasn't. I managed to kind of walk away from that and again, continue to convince myself that I had to do this. I was on this path. I just had to make it work. And like I say, the universe and my subconscious had other plans.
So there's the kind of signs or signals, if you will, that come.
Yeah.
And so often we're just not listening, we're ignoring, right?
Ignoring.
How often I hear that story, it's fascinating what you're saying, Rachel, in regards to just needing to learn how to listen.
Yeah.
Just to listen. Yeah. It's simpler than simple. We just don't listen sometimes, do we?
Well, and it's hard because we do have, I talk about the armor that we build up and the ability to, as I said, kind of swat those annoying gnats into my subconscious fly strip. We are set up to want things to stay consistent, even though there's so much great out there when it comes to change and what we can explore. It's always going to be scary. It's always going, even if it's change, we elect to take on our own. And so each journey is going to have different whispers. It's going to have different signs. I talk about clicks like in a lock. And so a lot of times we go through this journey, and even once we start to listen, because it's safer not to listen. We said illusion, delusion, all of the above. We start to listen and we start to hear things. And even then, it takes us a while. Sometimes we need a kick in the ass or a cast iron skillet to bash us upside the head. And the tricky part is that the next time we're on a journey, the next adventure we have, the signs could all sound different. They could feel different. And so even though we kind of come through this like, okay, great, now I know exactly what I'm doing. And it was funny because I talk about this idea of going through the goo, which is the whole process of transformation. And about a year after after a year after I started writing, I had my first draft and I was trying to figure out even what genre this was. And I'm a big believer that we don't put each other in boxes. It's like boxes don't exist. Everything in life is a continuum or continua. And I adamantly feel like I'm not going to let people put me in boxes. I'm not going to put myself in boxes. And I got to the point where I was trying to figure out the genre or what this book was. And I'm like, oh my God, Rachel, you're doing it again. You're trying to find the box. Just step back. And so even as I'm writing about the goo and change and seeing the signs, I'm still not seeing the signs. And I think the other piece is normal. We blame ourselves for saying, oh my God, how did I not see that? Well, yes. And sometimes it just takes us to be able to actually step across that threshold or have that last bash in the head to really be able to see
Mhm.
what it is we're facing and how we're showing up.
Yeah. Because maybe we weren't ready. We
Maybe
weren't
not.
ready, right? We just weren't ready for it. It would have actually not led to a very positive outcome if we did listen at that
Yep.
season in our life when the signs were very clear. What I can sense people may be thinking as they're hearing you share this is like they're probably thinking, yes, I'm with you, but how do I do it? How do I work through that fear? How do I push through? Because it's so powerful in people, Rachel, right? That sense of like, I want to feel safe. I want that comfort, that the idea of pursuing the hero's journey, just the idea of it scares people, and they actually have a physical sensation within their own body
Oh,
that holds them back, right? How do you work through it? What are some of the steps or ways in which you'd recommend people to answer that calling?
I think several things. One, I do think it's about even figuring out what may be holding you back. Like, what is it you might want? And I'm not even saying people talk about, the BHAG, the big, hairy, audacious goal. Start small. If you're really feeling that stuck, just, what's one thing if you could change tomorrow and you could not be afraid and you could feel 100% confident, what would you go do?
Mm,
And it's not even that you're going to go do that, but it's telling you something. Watch how you react, watch what shows up, and then start maybe small. Some people don't. Some people dive into the deep end, and that's great for them. And it's important for people to realize it's not a one size fits all. So just because you didn't do it the way your friend or this, star, celebrity did it, doesn't mean it's wrong. This is your path. And that's the other
mhm,
thing. The people are waiting for their path to show up. And it's like, it doesn't. The path isn't just something that reveals itself, it's something we build. And yes, we get signals along the way if we're on the right path, but it's made out of building blocks. Take one block, do one thing with that one block today, and just start, moving. And that's why I do the exercises in the back. You get to play around with it. Again, it's not about me forcing you. You choose. It's important for us to feel empowered.
mm.
That being said, it's important to also get people around us that, one, won't enable us to stay stuck, and two, might help give us the kick in the ass we need. And feeling safer when we have someone with us in our village, as I like to call it. It could be a friend, it could be a family member, it could be a mentor, it could be a therapist. Wherever you are on your journey, whatever you need, find that support to help move you forward. Because it's not something, people talk about, oh, I did this all on my own. Let's be realistic. You didn't. You,
Yeah.
you didn't. Nobody does things all on their own. And if they say they did, either they're afraid of admitting that they didn't or they're completely oblivious. I honestly would rather be the former, because if I'm completely oblivious, eventually something really big and some really big skillet is going to bash me in the face. So at least, if I'm under the illusion, or if maybe I'm going through imposter syndrome and I have to prove that I did this all myself, maybe that's a little easier to overcome eventually.
Yeah. Well, there are a few things that I'll take from that. The first one was taking those small steps, not feeling like it's this huge leap. You just find what works for you. The power of community, I think, is so
Mhm.
valuable when you're surrounding yourself with a lot of people who are in that negative mind space. They're saying there's not enough scarcity. It has an effect. It always does. So you want to make sure you're around people that lift you up. And then there was something you were saying about having choice. And I wanted to talk a little bit about that because when you're choosing what you want, what I think is the most powerful thing, Rachel, is to be able to know what the destination is, like what does the end look like, and get really specific on that. And in other words, not to say it's this big lofty goal that you're attached to. I think that's not what I mean. It's more of, okay, what does good look like?
Mhm.
Right? What does success look like to you, not to what
Yes.
other people say success looks like? What success looks like to you? And I was just having a coaching session with someone earlier today, and we were talking through this, and I asked him to give me a lot of detail. Like I told him, okay, well, where do you see yourself when this happens? Okay, who's around you? What are you wearing? Like I got real specific with him because I said, I want you to picture that. And then, hey, when you go to build this, don't
Yeah.
obsess over how. Don't force yourself to have to overthink and overanalyze every step. Just trust yourself that you'll figure out the right next step because your mind is powerful enough to be able to know, hey, that's the end we're after. And we will be guided naturally throughout the journey.
Yes. I love that. I think I talk about that with my coaching clients too. Like, how do you define success? And sometimes they have this very nebulous, we all have this very nebulous, I say they, like as if I'm not a part of the they, as if we're not part of the they. Leaders are people, fundamentally, the last time I looked. So it's very nebulous. It's like, oh, I want to do this. And to your point, it's like running a race with no finish line. How do you know when you're done? So I absolutely agree in that visual and getting connected and committed to that. I think that is very powerful for two things. One, because you do get out of the what. You obviously have to have implementation, right? You have to
Of
figure out how
course.
to do that. But the other thing about it is maybe you don't know the how yet. Maybe that's okay that you don't know the how and that you keep getting pulled forward. The piece I struggle with communicating and maybe even communicating with myself is that for me, it's this balance of getting really clear about your goals, what success looks like, and being able to visualize it, very visual person, um, and knowing that if this is a journey and the road is long, it's very possible that your ultimate destination is not what you think it is today. And that's okay. So, how do you balance being specific and yet holding it loosely?
Yeah, I love that. I'm with you 100%. I oftentimes use the analogy of taking a flight. If I'm flying from JFK to LAX, New York to Los Angeles, and I know, hey, LAX is the destination. And as you're flying, you're feeling as though, you know what? I really want to go to San Francisco, the Bay Area, right?
Yeah,
That feels like the right destination. Well, you've actually made a lot of progress towards that destination anyway, right?
you have.
You just have to have that flexibility to be able to change course and adjust during the flight and not feel like, well, we've gone all the way halfway across the country. Let's turn around and go back to New York, right? Like, no, like it could be really great that you made that progress and then you just make a pivot as you're proceeding.
One of the things I talk about is exactly that. It's the idea that sometimes we take a choice or we go in a particular direction because it's going to take us exactly to the destination where we want to go. And sometimes we're on a road specifically because it has a great exit ramp to the next leg of our journey.
I like that a lot. Yeah, that's really, really good visual. I could tell you're a visual person because
I am a visual person.
yeah, I just pictured what you said. That's awesome. Now you brought up leadership, and I wanted to be sure that that I ask you about leadership because the story that we're gonna dive into here in a bit, Gary, he's a leader. He's struggling a bit here with some changes. What I wanted to ask you first, actually, is I'm with you that not everyone's the same. There's uniqueness to every leader. What I also think there are some common qualities that we
Mhm.
see in great leadership. And knowing your experience coaching leaders for years now, what do you see as some of the common qualities in the great leaders that you've worked with?
I'm going to answer that question in two parts. Part of what is you asked me, and part of it is what you didn't ask me.
Okay.
I find one of the things that shows up for me. I have a particular leader I'm coaching right now, and early in his career, and it's one of those where he's he's wrestling with, is this normal? Is this just me? And
Hmm.
I use the analogy of it's like when we go to a doctor, right? In most of our life, we want to be unique. We want to be special. We want to bring something, of different value. There is no place in the world we want to be less unique than in a doctor's office. If there's something wrong, you want that doctor to tell you, yep, that's textbook. Not, wow, that's fascinating. It's like, no, 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 I don't want to be fascinating. I want you to help me.
I've never seen this
I've
before.
never seen this before. That's bad. So I think one, normalizing for leaders that, to your point, there are consistent struggles. There are things that a lot of leaders especially go through early on that
Yeah.
it's just part of being a leader. It's part of growth and learning. in terms of what great leaders bring. And I think this is the way to both personalize it and kind of create this overall look at great leadership. And those aren't incompatible with each other. So what I think a great leader is able to do is look at who they are at their core. So I talk a lot about leadership is not a cookie cutter. When I was a kid, my mom would roll out the dough, you take the little stars. Of course, we want to make stars, right? And we put the star in the cookie, and we get perfect little replicas of each other. But when we have pushed that cookie cutter into the dough, we have left so much sugary goodness, like so much outside the cookie cutter. And it's such a loss. So what I say, I think great leaders really know who they are. They can tap into that. It's not about right and wrong. It's understanding yourself first. What are your values? What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? Because let's face that fact. What are your values, goals, all of that? And then how do you bring that to whatever it is you're doing? Yes, you will bring that in a way that is different to, say, one job versus another. We have, different definitions of success in different roles. And yet we're still bringing ourselves. And the only way to do that is to understand ourselves first. If we are constantly in reaction mode to what's happening around us, it will pull us off our center. And it's almost impossible to be a good leader when you're off balance.
I had a client who, when I first met him, he was struggling because he had a new leader and was like, I can't jive with this person. I can't really figure out what they want. They're so different. So he started to change his own behavior. He was starting to not be himself, and it was only making things worse, right?
Yeah.
And through the process of working together, he really had some aha moments in his self-discovery and recognizing his pattern. And I brought him up because it very much relates to what you said. Just last week, he sent me a voice note and saying, he's like, you know what I realized? Like this, I'm just the way I am. And I'm just going to be the way I am, 100% of me. What he realized was he just needed to detach from some of the outcomes and needing it to go exactly the way he wanted. But he said, it's not so binary. It's not either I myself and I need it to go exactly my way or I freak out, right? or I have to suppress myself and now I'm in a state of resistance. He found this middle ground where he said I could be 100% me, but just learn, like you said a moment ago, like not to be in reaction mode, to be able to instead stay in that center of objectivity, to be able to not fall into this pattern of I am so in need of it to go my way.
Yes, I think people confuse sometimes the behavior with who we are at our core. And we have to adapt behavior in different situations. It's about how do we adapt in a way that is authentic to us. For example, if you go to a movie, you're going to behave in one way. If you go to a library, you're going to behave in another, in a dance club, etc. We all have in social psychology what they talk about as scripts. Doesn't mean that it's prescriptive in terms of who we are, but we will change our behavior. It's about not sacrificing the core of who we are when we make those changes.
Yeah, that's well said. It's a healthy discernment that one can make, and it really is the binary thinking that we fall into. Either it's this or that, but you just really explained it well. That just see it from different angles, and be able to make sure you're staying true to yourself. Now, one thing that's happening in the story with Gary is there's a lot of change. New CEO, and he's getting new initiatives. And I can tell you, because I, of course, know the real person of whom I'm talking about here. He's had things one way for a very long time. Okay. And then it's all this change. Okay. So when you hear this from someone in a leadership role where there's this continuity that's been going on, but then all this disruption, what do you recommend to that leader on how they can work through the change and not fall into any real negativity or overwhelm?
Well, and to be fair, let's give ourselves a little room for negativity. We get to mope a little bit, and then we get to pull ourselves out of it. So, because I think we can also be too critical of ourselves, like, oh, I shouldn't feel this way. I shouldn't be stressed. I shouldn't be that. It's like, shitting, as they say, all over yourself. I think first of all, one of the things recognizing with Gary is at his level as a CFO, leadership is lonely. It's trite because it's true, is what I like to say, is that he, I mean, who would he talk to about this, right? He's not in a position, he doesn't want to and shouldn't talk to his team about it. They need him to be solid. They need to rely on him. He's probably not comfortable, especially with everything that's happened, to talk to a new CEO who doesn't have a relationship with. And peers, best intentions, they either usually jump in and try to tell you what to do, or they're wrestling with their own stuff around all this change. So finding someone like a coach, like you, like me, someone to really be able to talk to who is solely there for them, solely there to allow them to kind of like to hold the container and they can bounce around in it. I think fundamentally that's first and foremost. And the other piece is because it can be hard. And in the story, it talks about how he's really bringing this home, with his family. And it's not that our family can't be exceptionally supportive, but again, if he's experienced all this change, they have their own stuff. That's a lack of stability for them as well. So finding someone that can be wholly there for you and help guide you, because like we talked about, coaching isn't advice. It's not telling you what to do. It's about how do you come alongside someone and be there and help guide them through this process.
Yeah.
I think the other thing is when you haven't had to change for a very long time, it's like a muscle. It's like you haven't been using that muscle for a long time. It's going to take some time to, first of all, even remember what that feels like, and then rebuild and re-engage that muscle. If I don't go to the gym for, let's call it 10 years, I was going to say a month, but we know that's not true. Let's say I don't go for 10 years, then I'm going to get on the elliptical or I'm going to jump in the pool and it is going to hurt. And
Yeah.
that's part of transformation. Let's not pretend that this isn't going to be hard. It is. And it's not meant to discourage you. It's meant to understand what you're going to experience so that you're not thrown off. That you can say, oh, yeah, okay. I'm, like I said, going through the goo in the book and then helping them work through that. And I think, one, my guess is Gary's got a lot of imposter syndrome right now. He's not had to change for a long time. He's been very confident, very solid in his CFO role. And now his world has been turned upside down, potentially, or just the start of it being turned upside down. So being able to recognize that this is a completely new situation, that yes, he hasn't managed through this in a while. And yes, it is hard to be a leader in this situation when you have to guide others, even when you're not feeling solid. And that's normal. It's normal to feel that way. It's normal to feel like an imposter. In fact, I was just reading a book. I can't think of the author's name, but it's called Likeable Badass. And I love it. It's a great book. I'm halfway through, so take that with a grain of salt if folks out there want to read it. And she says that the only people who don't ever feel like imposters are imposters.
That's powerful. Yeah. And I appreciate that you started with grace, right?
Mm-hmm.
Encouraging someone like Gary, what he's going through, to give himself some grace, to not immediately fall into the should or shouldn't. I bring that up all the time with people. As soon as I hear that word, I will ask them if it's all right that I engage them in talking through the vocabulary that they're using, right? I shouldn't
Yeah.
feel like this. I should. As soon as that comes up, you're in a state of resistance and it's only spiraling the sense of the resistance that's coming up. So you have to be able to first say, hey, that's normal, right? Normalize
Yes.
it. And I appreciate that idea of him working with someone, having a mentor or coach, someone to be able to offer another perspective. And what he does in the story, and I hear this often, I'm sure you do too, where his team is complaining and he finds himself
Mm-hmm.
falling into that pattern. And I think that oftentimes people do this because they just think, oh, it's our way of connecting. We're complaining.
Hmm.
We're at the water cooler about what's going on. But of course, there's some impact to that. So, what would you say to someone who falls into that pattern of I can fuel that complaining within my team?
Hmm. I think, again, normalizing it, of course, you feel those things and you want an outlet. That's not, it's not going to help you. It's not going to help your team. What's going to happen is they are looking to you for stability. And when they don't find it, the anxiety in the team and everything is going to go up just that much higher. People a lot of times talk about bringing their full self to work. And in the best interpretation of that, it's great. The problem is we all have different interpretations of words, of concepts, of things like that. And some people think that means they can just show up and put any thought or any idea or any kind of random thing that they're feeling, thinking out on the table, and people just have to accept that. It's like that is not how people work. So his team needs him to be stable. And that's why he needs help. He needs an outlet somewhere else because him connecting with them, there's a way to do it. I can see it instead of it's him acknowledging what's happening without getting sucked into it. So he could sit down with his team. It's like, you know what? This is frustrating. There's a lot of uncertainty, and we are going to navigate that the best we can. Here's what I do know. Here's what I don't know. But the one thing I do know is I am here. I'm here to support you, and we're going to figure this out.
Yeah. I think you explained it so well. Acknowledging them, meeting them where they are, but then lifting them out of the hole that they see themselves in. It's not to sit in that hole with them and say, yeah, you're right, this sucks, this is awful, oh, I can't believe we're here in this hole, it's like, hey, let's figure out how to work through this. And I think that it reminds me of some of the work I've done some research on, or I should say I've read the research on, in regards to negative thinking, positive thinking, and neutral thinking. So, we have negative thinking, which is everything is going to go wrong. We obviously know that that's not the best mindset to adopt. But the idea of positive thinking actually can be quite harmful. When imagine, Gary says, "What do you mean? Everything's great. Everything's perfect. It's all sunshine and rainbows." That actually has sometimes an even worse impact, not only on the people of whom he's saying this to who just don't believe it, but his own subconscious, because he really does know that there are some issues. Instead, it's operating from neutral. When you think about neutral, it's okay, this is me just accepting the reality. This is where I'm at. The football analogy sometimes comes to me where it's like, okay, if you're watching football and it's 4th down and 15, meaning like you only have one play left to get 15 yards. You're not going to say, oh, we're definitely getting the first down, we got this. It's more of, hey, we have to figure this out. It's 15 yards to get it. What's the best play to be able to get us that first down, knowing that it's not going to be easy?
Well, and I think to your point that, and we'll go back to the word neutral in a minute, but coming from that position, you have more options because you're looking at, okay, what is the good? What is the bad? How do we make decisions knowing the landscape? Let's be realistic about where we are. And I would even say too, yes, neutral in the sense of somewhere between, but going back to the continuum, it's a dynamic neutral. So there are days you are going to feel more negative. There are days you're going to feel more positive. There are days you're going to feel more in the center. And that's okay too. It's okay to feel the pull. It's not about having to constantly, stay on that center. I've been working on my balance at the gym again. This is coming up a lot. I should probably listen to this. And you have those little platforms that you're trying to balance on the ball. And it's like so wanting to be able to stay exactly still in the middle so I don't wobble. But the reality is, what's important is the ability to help your body learn how to shift. So when you do lose your balance one way, your body can pull it back. When you do lose your balance the other way, your body pulls it back so you don't fall. Or in my case, you do fall, but you get back up.
Well, sometimes that's a good thing too, right? Because then your body is learning, right? And you're working and building up the muscle. So, okay, so we've covered a lot, but I want to ask you how you would work with Coach Gary, let's say, through this scenario. So let's say Gary realizes, hey, I do need some outside help, and he finds you or finds your book reads your book, gets inspired, goes to your website, and schedules some time to connect with you. And Rachel, he tells you his problems, he tells you his story, he tells you what he's working through. And you listen and you just download everything he's saying. You acknowledge what he's working through. And then you want to, knowing you wouldn't want to just vomit all this advice. You'd prompt a few questions, is my assumption, right? Of what asking him to think through what he's working through. So what would you ask him? What would be either the first question or a few questions that you would consider asking him to help him navigate his situation?
Well, I love, first of all, that we've already gone through the kind of tell me what's happening, because I think the first step is to just let people talk it through and understand kind of where they are. And I will say, and sometimes I have clients where we do have a meeting where I'll just stop them and say, is this one where you just want to vent, or is it you want to work on something? And sometimes they will say, I just want to vent. Great, we can do that as long as we're calling it what it is.
Right.
The other thing is stopping the venting at some point, because I'll tell them, look, if you're telling me stuff you already know, this is not coaching. It is venting. So I think once he has had the chance to talk about the landscape, talk about what's going on, what's stressing him, kind of what's happening. First of all, let's talk about what you do have control over. What does that look like in your life? And I think diving into that, especially because some people will say, well, I don't have any choice. No, you do. You may not like the choices you have, and that's very possible. And we can talk about how do you choose to get to better choices. But also acknowledging, I think, and in this case, because I was thinking about someone else that has gone through a situation like this, I don't have a choice, I have to do this. And in some ways, it's just recognizing it's important for you, because as a person that has that strong integrity, that feels good, the choices you have are not good choices for you. But also knowing that as a good person, it's like you could do something kind of like, much worse, but you're choosing to be a good person. So you're choosing to do X. So where does he have choice? Where does he have influence? And how does he start to focus on those pieces? What does that mean for him? Where can he rediscover agency in this? Because right now it feels like the winds of change are just pulling him in every direction. And as long as we feel that feeling of being pulled instead of being stable, it's very hard to get our bearings and go in any direction other than chaos. Yeah. So how do we start there? What is it? What do you have control over? Where can you have an influence? And explore that, because it's very possible at this point he doesn't feel like he has any choice. So where do you have choice?
Yeah. And why I love this approach is because it brings his attention into or away from all the things that he doesn't have control over and that have been creating all this worry and distress. And if we keep our attention on only those things, it doesn't serve us oftentimes. It's just creating more of the if-then scenarios and all the and it's just the frustration, the resistance only builds and builds. So your line of questioning is getting him back to focusing on what is within his control and what are the choices that he has. I love it. And so, Rachel, thank you so much for carving out time and chatting with us and helping to really give some incredible insights on leadership and how to work through transformation. And for anyone listening, I highly recommend check out Rachel's book, Butterfly Goo, The Down and Dirty Truth of Transformation. A lot of great stories in there, a lot of analogies like you share with us here in this episode. And people can find it by going to butterflygoobook.net. It's Butterfly Goo, just like you think, Goo book.net. And then they can learn more about your coaching at catamentum.com. That's CATAMENTUM.com. It's also in the show notes. So Rachel, thank you again for spending time with me today. This was a wonderful conversation. I appreciate you.
Thank you so much.
I just got my copy of Butterfly Goo, Rachel's book. I got the digital version, and I look forward to reading it because in that conversation, I loved her use of analogy and metaphor and being able to visually represent some of those shifts in mindset. which I think helps for me to retain information, and I hope it does for you as well. And let's break down what our insights are and our actionable takeaways. The first of 3 insights, I'm going to read this one word for word. Change happens when fear of the unknown is dwarfed by a looming dread of the same. I love the way she put it. When we have a fear around things always being the same, and that evokes in us the desire for change, then we actually do change. So at times we need to be reflecting on that and realizing that change is a muscle. And if we don't use that muscle for a while, it is very uncomfortable. It aches, just like when you go to the gym and you haven't done a certain workout in a long time. You're going to be sore for longer. In the same way, if you've been in a stable position, then expect discomfort when you need to make a change. Number 2, each of us have our own hero's journey. Now, in the hero's journey, there's the break from the known to the unknown. And there's an important part of this is to see through the illusion of safety. That nothing is as safe as our minds are making it out to be, because tomorrow we cannot predict what will happen. And knowing that each of us have our own version of this. I also appreciated how she talked about the trap of clarity, where we want to see the entire path before we start walking, but that's holding us back a lot of the time. It's a trap. Instead, when you take the steps forward, the path then reveals itself. So taking steps forward are more important than having everything clear before you start walking. Third insight, being a good leader starts with knowing yourself. Knowing yourself doesn't mean that you never change your behavior. It doesn't mean that you don't adapt. You just align your behavior with your values, and you need to know what those are. And I like the cookie cutter analogy that she used, which is if you put that star onto the cookie dough, you're going to throw away all that goodness. You want to be your authentic self and then just adapt as needed. And remember that as a leader, people are looking to you for stability. Actionable takeaways. First of 3. Number 1, listen to the whispers. Listen to the signals. Notice the threads. Notice the patterns and ask yourself, what would I do if I wasn't afraid? And then start small. Small steps, small reflections to move yourself forward. Second actionable takeaway. Surround yourself with people who won't let you stay stuck. I appreciate how she was really honest about this. You can't rely, let's say, on your team or even a stakeholder or a partner within work to have those conversations you need to have. There's a person that you need to have in your life, maybe more than one even, mentor, therapist, coach, someone that will be there 100% for you. They're there for you to hear you out and offer you new perspectives, ask you the right questions to help you to never stay stuck. And then the third actionable takeaway, focus on what you can control. Know what your controllables are. Where do you have choice? Where do you have choice? Because when things become so overwhelming, we have to return back to what is our circle of influence, knowing what those levers are that are available for you to pull. Join us on Friday's episode. I am going to share a lesson that I've learned from a rapper. He's one of the most famous rappers in the world, one of the best rappers of our generation. I've always been a hip-hop fan. And I thought, I'm going to share something that he's really helped me through. And from one song of his that I've listened to, I can't tell you how many times, because the message of it was so powerful. And it's related to what Rachel was talking about. That is how your journey is yours alone. And to be able to recognize that and let that be something that actually fuels you and helps you to really stay aligned to your authentic self. So until next time, thank you so much for listening.